Thank you, CSU.
Ryan Storm with CSU. Mr. Chair, have a handout here that's in red. I've got 2 slides to show you real quickly. The first slide in front of you shows the trustees' budget request to the left, the governor's January budget proposal in the middle, and the governor's May revision proposal to your right. In the governor's January budget, we could barely cover many of the mandatory costs and other obligations that were included in our support budget request. But with the governor's May revision proposal, you see how the possibilities have improved somewhat for the CSU. With the May proposal, we would be able to invest in more funded enrollment, about 0.75% more than in January, finance about $120 million worth of projects, and additional critical infrastructure, and fund about 60% of what we think is a very key part of our program, which is the student success and completion initiatives. Based on the latest proposal from the governor, we would be able to invest some funding in all these requested areas except information technology infrastructure, which, as you all know, is a key part of any infrastructure. It's as critical as sewer and water and electrical, it seems like nowadays. However, I iterate that the trustees' budget request of $269 million is the minimum level of new necessary investment. If the state were to halt its investments at the levels proposed by the governor, it would not provide an appropriate educational opportunity to the students of California. The takeaway here is that the governor's administration has taken a step to narrow the funding gap between its January budget proposal and the CSU support budget plan for 15-16. We appreciate that step, but there is more to do, at least $59 million more to do. For example, this state is and will continue to have a higher education demand and supply issue. You will recall that the Public Policy Institute of California mentioned that there's going to be $1 million degree shortcomings, and there's evidence of this right on the horizon and in the recent past. Between 7-8 and 12-13, we see 40,000 more high school graduates who are A through G eligible or have achieved those requirements. We also see over the past 3 years tens of thousands per year of new students added at the community colleges. And you also have seen in our data that we have denied approximately 30,000 CSU fully denied eligible students on our campuses. Yet, under the May revision, we're able to add a whopping 3,000 additional students. So we see that there is clearly demand now and in the future for our services. You got to liken it to like a freeway with way too many on-ramps. There are lots of students wanting on that freeway, but not enough lanes. Providing CSU with more funding for student success and completion initiatives, new enrollments, and facilities will begin to free up that higher education traffic jam. We at CSU are a significant contributor to solving that problem. We will be able to offer more courses for existing and new students and provide services that are key to student success. Harkening back to that PPIC report I just mentioned, the conclusion by Hans Johnson is this: gradual increases in college enrollment rates, a 20% improvement in transfer rates, and an improvement in completion rates at CSU would together reduce the degree gap by 1/2 by 2025. This clearly means that we are part of that solution, and the part of that solution for the state of California. The next slide I wanted to point out real quickly shows the structural challenges that we're dealing with. What this does is it shows you the state general fund disinvestment and then reinvestment from the high water mark of 7-8 up until the 14-15 revised estimated year. And what you see here is you see that CSU is still down about 14%, while other areas in state government have had significant restorations over time. My colleague from the community colleges, Dan Troy, mentioned that the community colleges have seen just a foregone COLA adjustment. We have seen that, and on top of that, we have not even gotten back to the bare minimum of being the 7-8 number. So we're still in a pretty decent hole. Considering the limited resources that have been provided to CSU since the Great Recession, you can see here what has happened since the year just before the Great Recession, how CSU has fared in relation to other state programs. We appreciate the support of the 80-plus members of the Assembly and Senate and their support for additional funding for the CSU. With the governor now showing his very limited additional support, we trust that this House, as well as the Senate, will make that correct decision to prioritize funds for CSU. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back real quick to your to the chart. Ryan, let's go back to the main chart with the trustees' request.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's in the governor's budget for May and from January and June. So essentially, the biggest piece, as far as in addition to the priority of this subcommittee is enrollment, and certainly appreciate your ability to nearly double from 3,500 students to 6,000. That's the big gap in the request is that 103 versus the roughly 59, nearly 60 that you received. So if there was an additional 63, you would be able to fund 3% enrollment growth, right?
Yes, and I think, though, I want to temper that with the fact that we do believe that in the spring of 16 we have some pretty significant capacity to bring in transfers. That's when a lot of our transfers are arriving on our campuses. Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, when we enroll students predominantly in the fall, it's about a 50-50 split between first-time freshmen and community college students. So I want to temper those comments by saying if you were to provide more funding for enrollment specifically, you have to provide us enough lead time in order for us to meet those expectations. So, for example, if you were to provide more funding now, we've already made a lot of hiring decisions beginning last fall. And so what we would hope for is that if you are to provide funding, that you aren't expecting that we would meet that target exactly in the 15-16 year, but that you give us priority or give us some wiggle room in terms of meeting those targets. We think that we can address some of the students that have been waitlisted to some degree. I don't have specific numbers, but my academic affairs colleagues at the system believe that there are some abilities to perhaps squeeze in more folks in the fall and then do some more enrollment work in the spring. But I just wanted to kind of leave that out there for you to consider.
Mm-hmm. So every additional $1 million that you got, you would prioritize for enrollment growth, or would you go back to the trustees' request where you also have the buckets essentially focusing on the student success and completion initiative and the catch-all infrastructure piece?
The chancellor's highest priority is with the student success and completion initiative. He really believes that is a key part of our current lot of students, right? Mm-hmm. They need to have those services and those high-touch, high-impact practices to really make sure that those who are in the system are actually progressing to a degree, creates more room, right? As you're able to stay in school and take a higher unit load and work your way through college and you complete, then you're actually creating more space for, rather than just creating new spots for new enrollments, you're actually creating a better throughput. So the chancellor really believes that there is a need to invest there. Obviously, with enrollment, as you dial up more funding for enrollment, it gets that much more trickier and more difficult to really kind of hit what we'd call enrollment targets, right? You get to that 3, to that 4, to that 5%. If it's added in, it's harder to get to in a very short amount of time. If you give us a longer time frame, then obviously there's an ability to do so.
Okay. And then in the existing allocation, the 119 plus the 39, is it 39, right? The governor put in there?
Put in 38.
38, yeah. From those two combined, what's the amount of money that you have available to finance your capital needs?
We think under the governor's May revision, we could use about $10 million on an annual basis and use that to finance some of our critical infrastructure. What that equates to is about $120 to $150 million worth of actual project costs. That's going to vary by rates and the time that you go to market, but that's a pretty good chunk in terms of being able to do something for our buildings. But obviously, our plan is for 25. We, as you know, have a new requirement that all of our capital is funded out of the CSU. Mm-hmm. The state has decided it's not going to, under this administration, to issue lease revenue bonds nor GO bonds in order to do our capital. So that is a very key part of our plan here. Something that has not been on the radar, obviously.
So going back to $100 million in projects. So, for example, we have a huge priority need for a science building here at Cal State Sacramento, which I fully support, of course. And that's almost $100 million for that building, right?
That would be one project, wouldn't it? And if you just threw it all into all eggs in one basket. I think one thing that we have in terms of on the books is we have $1.8 billion of deferred maintenance and critical capital needs, and that number is likely growing.
What about for new buildings and buildings that need to be replaced, like the science building here in Sacramento?
That would be part of our critical infrastructure list.
What's that number, though? Not deferred maintenance, but just new buildings.
I can't cite it per se right now. There's a lot of overlap on that deferred maintenance and critical infrastructure.
But basically what we're doing here allows you to do 10% of it?
It allows us to do about 5% right now.
So we're dropping the buck as far as what we need to do to
I backpack a lot, and every ounce counts that you can shed. So in this case, I think that's the same thing. Every ounce counts towards our facilities. And obviously, they're going to be the most critical ones that we're going to address first, right? They're going to be the ones that are quite ready to have pipes burst or roofs to fail, that kind of thing. So they're going to go to the highest priority pieces. So,
okay, thank you. Other questions? And now we'll proceed to public comment from this item. So if you could line up right here and wait just 1 second.
Absolutely.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christopher Castrillo on behalf of the California Faculty Association. Certainly appreciative of the additional investment in the CSU system. We do just want to reiterate, though, the proposed funding falls short of what's needed to address the issues that are facing students and faculty today. Our system grants half of the state bachelor's degrees, a third of master's degrees. More than 50% of our teachers graduate from the CSU. We're educating more than 450,000 students, and that's with turning away 30,000 students just last year. We feel that the budget allocation as it currently stands just doesn't prioritize the needs of both students and faculty moving forward. Specifically want to highlight the issue of tenure-track faculty. That's an issue that came up at the community college level earlier in the discussions today. We feel that the same logic certainly applies to the CSU system. We don't feel that we can have a discussion around enrollment growth, timely access to degree completion, and quality without at the same time setting forth some parameters to make sure that we have the full-time faculty on campus providing office hours to the students who do need them. So we do look forward to working with your committee and your counterparts in the Senate on that issue. And we also just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and the Assembly's dedication to going above and beyond the governor's funding proposal. And we would echo the comments of the CSU that their proposal of at least $97 million is what's minimum for required to continue to improve the CSU system. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Robert Frazier, and I'm here on behalf of the California State Student Association, which represents the 460,000 students of the CSU. We were pleased to see that Governor Brown's May revise recognized that investing in the CSU and its students is a smart decision for the state and its future. This increased ongoing funding will allow the CSU to continue to focus on student success through robust campus graduation initiatives and tackling deferred maintenance issues. In addition, the CSU may be able to admit additional eligible students in spring or fall of 2016. While this is an important first step to ensuring that the people of California have access to quality degrees that offer critical economic mobility for our families, we hope this committee will continue fighting for students to be a priority in the budget and go above what the governor has proposed in the May revise. Also quickly, I'd like to touch on the $2 million being allocated for remediation. That amount could go a long way as CSU has improved remediation with programs like Early Start that show real promise and could be more robust and impact more students with greater funding. We would want any partnership with the community colleges to take that experience into account and not just amount to moving students off their optimal path into a college they didn't plan to attend. In fact, CSU data and student input showed that summer acclimation to CSU campuses may be one of the best and most impactful aspects of the Early Start program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Erica Romero on behalf of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. The CSU is already the largest purveyor of four-year degrees to Latinos in the nation, but we know they had to turn away 30,000 students. And while we appreciate that the governor did find some additional monies, if we could get the additional $97 million, they'd accept more Latino students and additionally provide the services to get them out the door with the diploma. And finally, just to echo the CSU Student Association, we want to make sure that as they do basic skills and any remediation, that we aren't taking underrepresented students and shifting them to the community colleges when they are CSU eligible. We do know that transfer rates for Latino and underrepresented students are fairly low, so we want to make sure that if they start at a four-year degree, they stay there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Heard you loud and clear. We'll proceed to the hold this issue open and hold to go to the next item. California State Library. Department of Finance.
Matthew Sejo, Department of Finance. So the May revision proposed is funding for the library broadband project, the library literacy program, and the library preservation activities. So the broadband proposals are as follows. The May revision includes $225,000 general fund ongoing for a contract with an entity to provide administrative and fiscal services related to the California Public Library broadband project. And this funding is necessary to support the broadband program approved in the budget last year. Additionally, the May revision includes $1.5 million general fund on a one-time basis for grants to public libraries that require additional equipment, network upgrades, or modification to physical sites in order to support broadband internet access. And these funds would increase the number of public libraries that can participate in the broadband project. Furthermore, the May revision includes funding for the library literacy program. This proposal includes $2 million general fund ongoing for the Literacy and English Acquisition Services Program, which allocates funds to the local public libraries to support instruction in basic literacy for adults. This proposal is consistent with the administration's focus on education and training for adults. Lastly, the May revision proposes funding for the library preservation activities. The May revision proposes $521,000 in general fund, including $181,000 ongoing for 2 new positions, and $340,000 on a one-time basis for digital scanning equipment. And the state librarian requested a review of its practices, and these proposals respond to some of the identified deficiencies. I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Elliot.
I'll cover the issues in the order that the Department of Finance presented them. The first issue regarding the broadband connectivity. Last year in 2014, the state library did a needs assessment to estimate the amount of funding that would be needed for this endeavor. And at that time, they estimated they would need $2 million on a one-time basis for equipment grants. In a follow-up report issued this year, they're now estimating $13 million. So the costs have increased quite a bit. We're a little concerned about the cost, such a large cost increase from the original estimate. The state provided $1 million of the $2 million last year, and we would recommend providing the additional $1 million that was originally estimated, bringing total funding to $2 million. That would mean reducing the governor's proposed amount from $1.5 million to $1 million. Regarding the funding for the proposed funding for literacy, you've had a lot of conversations in this subcommittee about the adult education regional consortia block grants. And we're concerned about expanding literacy programs that are run by local libraries outside of this regional consortia approach. The state seems to be moving in the direction of wanting a more coordinated finance system. Libraries are eligible to participate in the regional consortia, so we'd recommend rejecting the governor's proposal and directing local libraries that seek funding to expand their literacy services to work with the regional consortia to access that funding. The last proposal for some positions and equipment for state operations for preservation materials, the administration didn't submit the typical workload information that accompanies requests for state operations positions on Thursday when it released the May Revise. We just received some information on this proposal a few hours ago. We're happy to review it, and we'll provide your staff with recommendations tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. California State Library.
I thought Finance summarized our proposals quite well. Did you want me to respond to the LAO?
Sure.
Jerry, maybe you can answer this one a little bit better, but I don't recall ever putting a maximum of $2 million on the need for site improvements and kind of last mile costs related to library connectivity. When I started a year ago, there was a $1 million allocation in the budget, and there was some talk of adding an additional $1 million, but I don't recall that being the universe.
The report that I mentioned predates the current state librarian. It was prepared under the previous state librarian, but it identified $2 million in one-time need for equipment costs.
Well, that may have been 1 year's worth, but I think I know the assessment study you're talking about, but I've seen estimates of hooking up libraries from that report that start at $14 million and go as high as 22. But we can talk about it more. I don't want to take up your time.
Sure, and well,
debating it.
Maybe you could address the proposals. They recommended that we not accept the piece which focuses on adult literacy, saying you should essentially team up with the adult ed partnerships that are being established to focus on that.
Yeah,
how would this differ from that, and why is this needed?
There's been an ongoing, conducted through libraries literacy program for 30 years. That the 30th anniversary was last year. The analogy I use is that the programs in the libraries basically bring people up to a 5th grade proficiency, which is usually the minimum level you need to benefit from an adult education course or something at the community colleges. So our libraries don't really like it very much, but I say we're like, we're the river cats feeding the giants is what it amounts to. Is you're not going to benefit from an adult education or a community college course without achieving some level of literacy. Now, some of the people that go into the libraries program, they set a goal, right, which is kind of how we measure, the success of it. And so sometimes the goal is to be able to read emails. Sometimes it's to be able to write a resume or to read a story to a grandkid at night. So some of them don't carry on into the adult education system, but those that do require at least a 5th grade reading proficiency, which is what we provide. And to finish, some libraries are very actively involved in these local consortiums. And there hasn't been, to my knowledge, there hasn't been money made available through the consortiums as yet. Right?
If I could clarify, too.
That's okay. We got it. Just because we're trying to wrap it up. And no one else is here but me. So. And then I get it. So. Okay.
Well, so should I keep filibustering or?
No,
okay.
I think we're okay. I think we're all right. We're okay. Okay. Thank you for the presentation on this. Public comment? We could try to keep it brief.
Sure, I will, Mr. Chair and members. Thanks very much. Mike Dillon with the California Library Association on the state library issues. Strong support of the governor's proposal, the funding for connection grants that will allow public libraries to join the high-speed broadband network is just crucial. Phase 1 been a tremendous success. We also support the aggregator fee. That's important. Regarding the amount of money that was referenced here, we've been at this right from the very beginning, and early on we were just begging for $1 million because we knew there'd be people for getting some connection grants, but as Mr. Lucas said, we always thought the figure could be anywhere $14 million and upwards. Regarding the additional money for literacy, as you heard me say before, Mr. Chair, in your other hearing, there's 4,000 people on a wait list. So this money is going to go for those folks as well as coordination with the adult literacy. We heard earlier from some of the people in the consortiums that we're never going to get any 98 money. They may or may not contract with us. So this money is really crucial. Lastly, we would just like your consideration for some additional funding for the 3 items that were listed in the letter we referred to as Mr. Gatto letter that had 27 of your colleagues signing on to that. The first item is for for additional connection grants. We anticipate that this next year, some of the big counties are coming on: Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego. Los Angeles has 80 branch libraries, so it's going to take some funding for those. 86. These would be one-time funds, by the way. Second in the letter is some funding for the Library Services Act. Last year, this committee put in $8 million, which we call the Lending and Loaning Program, which was very helpful to some of the small libraries. The letter asked for $4 million, which we would appreciate your consideration. And lastly, the Gatto letter requests $1 million for career online high school library literacy programs to continue to fund or expand grants for literary coaches and whatnot for adults that are looking to earn their high school diploma, which we think is important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll be brief. Kim Lewis with CNIC, who is pleased to support the governor's proposal of the May revise of additional funding for bringing on the public libraries. I would just concur with the state library in saying that I think as we're going forward, we're seeing a lot of demand from the local libraries in terms of the lack of equipment that they have locally and their technical expertise. And so the additional one-time cost can really help them so that they can connect quicker and sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it. We'll hold this issue open. Next item, issue 10. The awards for innovation in higher education.
Good evening, Chair McCarty. Molly Quasabarth with the Department of Finance. The May revision proposal for the awards for innovation in higher education includes the following changes: reallocating the $50 million in non-Proposition 98 general fund that was appropriated in the 2014 Budget Act. Of that amount, $23 million would be allocated to Proposition 98 to meet the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee. This amount reflects the awards that were made to 6 applications submitted by community colleges. The non-Proposition 98 funding that was provided in 2014-15 would be decreased to $27 million, reflecting the awards that were made to 8 CSU and UC campuses. The 2015-16 governor's budget codified the Innovation Awards program to establish the program in statute. The May revision proposes to change the proposed trailer bill language to align the program's goals with those specified for post-secondary education in Chapter 367, SB 195, which was enacted in 2013. These 3 goals include improving student access and success, better aligning degrees and credentials with the state's economic, workforce, and civic needs, and ensuring the effective and efficient use of resources in order to increase high-quality post-secondary educational outcomes and maintain affordability. Lastly, the May revision proposal provides an additional $25 million in one-time Proposition 98 general fund for awards to community colleges that implement changes to practice, policies, or systems that meet the state's goals for higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. LAO?
We concur with the administration that it makes sense to count awards earned by community colleges towards the Prop 98 minimum guarantee. We continue to recommend that you reject this proposal. However, for similar reasons we've cited in previous hearings, it rewards actions that have already been taken. For example, the committee this year gave one award to Long Beach for the Long Beach Promise, which was a program started 7 years ago. And a second concern is that we don't know if these innovations are even going to be replicated at other campuses. There's no real guarantee of that. So we continue to recommend you reject it.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Hearing none, we will hold this issue open until the May revise. And lastly, we'll have the catch-all public comment on any issue that's not on the agenda. Sounds like my city council hearings. At the end of the hearings, we said public comment issues not on the agenda. We were here for sometimes an hour, so hopefully this won't be an hour.
Well, this is odd. Thanks for staying. Veronica Villalobos with the Independent Colleges and Universities. We wanted to just be on record and remind the committee that there continues to be an 11.3% cut for Cal Grant students who would like to attend the private nonprofit sector in the fall. This would be the third cut in 4 years. We were disappointed that the May revise did not address the issue. It would impact about 9,000 students coming into the sector in the fall. And we think it's counterintuitive to limit the choices that these students have when we're talking about limited capacity in the public four-year sector. So this partnership has been successful. Students graduate at faster rates. They are underrepresented in higher education, and so we urge the committee to look at this issue and repeal the cut in the 15-16 budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Erica Romero on behalf of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. The independent not-for-profit sector educates as many Latino students as the UC. They do a very good job of graduating them. We're very concerned about the 11% cut and would like to see it permanently rescinded. And that is our highest priority in financial aid, but also a reminder that we'd love to see additional competitive Cal Grants for the non-traditional students so that they can get through college as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This item wasn't agendized because it wasn't the governor's May revise, but it's on our list for potential action later in the week. So thank you for participating all, and that's the last item, and we will adjourn.